new weapon, H.I.S.S. This girl's a genius. H.I.S.S is unbeatable.
Let's make lemonade. Okay. Let's go to work.
The Cobra H.I.S.S. Few vehicles in a toy line are more iconic than the Cobra H.I.S.S is to G.I. Joe. And the H.I.S.S has seen a big resurgence lately, with a lot of people receiving and loving their classified HasLab H.I.S.S. And I have to say, it's a very impressive vehicle. They did a lot of smart updates to the H.I.S.S when they released it in 1/12 scale. I sure love my H.I.S.S collection. Anyone who knows me knows that I have over 60 of them.
That is an absolute Chad move right there.
But what if I told you the Cobra H.I.S.S is not a tank?
What?
Well, it's true. The Cobra High Speed Sentry is not a tank, and I'm going to explain it
Barney style.
I'd like to thank you all right off the bat for checking out this video. If you're new here, maybe give us a subscribe. It's something free that you can do, and I hope you enjoy this video. Let's get into it. What is a tank? It's a very simple question, and we're going to explore that right now. The word tank was first applied in a military context to what the British described as land ships during World War I to keep their nature secret before the vehicles entered service. Until the invention of the main battle tank during World War II, tanks were typically categorized either by weight class, light, medium, heavy, super heavy, or their doctrinal purposes: breakthrough, cavalry, infantry, cruiser, or reconnaissance. A tank is an armored fighting vehicle intended as a primary offensive weapon in ground combat. Tank designs are a balance of heavy firepower, strong armor, and battlefield mobility provided by suspension tracks and a powerful engine. The tank's primary armament is a turret-mounted main gun, usually they're turret-mounted, but we'll come back to that. The main gun is usually smoothbore and between 120 and 125 millimeters, equipped with a bore evacuator for expelling gas from the gun tube. Russian T-80, that's a tank. Israeli Merkava 4, tank. British Warrior 2, not a tank. Chinese Type 99, tank. American M113, not a tank. Russian BMP-3, nope, not a tank. American M1A2 Abrams, badass tank. American M109 series Paladin, those aren't tanks. There's even the rare designs of tanks without a turret where the main gun is housed within the hull of the vehicle. I told you we'd get back to it. Next question. So why then has the Cobra High Speed Sentry, or H.I.S.S, been referred to as a tank for decades? There are two specific instances when the H.I.S.S has been officially referred to as a tank that I'm going to focus on in this video. Once, directly during part 1 of Arise Serpentor Arise, which aired on September 15th, 1986, when General Hawk says this:
But they don't have the armor or the punch of the old H.I.S. tanks.
And a second time that barely squeaks in as a flimsy excuse with the naming of the 1991 H.I.S.S as the septic tank, because it was part of the Eco Warriors subline. Get it? Septic tank, Eco Warriors, ecological. Yeah. It makes more sense than calling it the septic tract vehicle. And I can already hear somebody saying in the comments, actually, Chad, the back of the 83 H.I.S.S box says tank treads, thank you. Yep, it sure does. But that's just improper use of military terminology. Besides, the 2012 San Diego Comic-Con Shockwave H.I.S.S box says tank on it, and this main gun's some kind of Cybertronian energy weapon.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
So it doesn't count. Before retiring from the U.S. Army, I was a heavy weapons master gunner and infantry weapons company platoon sergeant for my final 5 years in uniform. According to Army doctrine, as outlined in Training Circular, or TC 3-20.31, which covers the training and qualifications of crews, and TC 3-20.31-4, which is the direct fire engagement process, there are specific criteria vehicle crews use in order to identify battlefield threats. And this directly links into what is a tank, according to military doctrine. TC 3-20.31-4, or the Direct Fire Engagement Process Training Circular, uses the acronym DDIA for Threat Vehicle Identification. That's a 5-part engagement process.
Now we know.
For the purpose of this video, we're going to be looking specifically at the identify portion of the direct fire engagement process regarding the Cobra H.I.S.S. AFVID, or Armed Forces Vehicle Identification, is the systematic approach to identifying vehicles on the battlefield using types, categories, and acronyms in order to gain an accurate description. There are 2 types of vehicles: aerial and ground vehicles. Pretty straightforward. Main ground vehicle categories are tracked or wheeled. Main aerial vehicle categories are fixed wing or rotary wing. We're not looking at aerial vehicles for this video, so we're going to shelf that. So looking at ground vehicles, which is our type, and knowing the Cobra H.I.S.S is squarely in the main category of tracked vehicle, we're going to use the acronym HATS in order to further identify the H.I.S.S per Unified Land Operations Doctrine. HATS is an acronym that stands for Hull, Armament, Turret, and Suspension. And those are the 4 criteria that we use to identify ground vehicles in a combat environment. Now, just because it's HATS doesn't mean that that's a specific order in which you identify the vehicles. Sometimes you're going to see the armament long before you see the suspension, et cetera, so we don't have to take it in order. But for the purpose of identifying the H.I.S.S for this video, we're just going to take it in order, again, Barney style. Let's look at the hull of the Cobra H.I.S.S. There are 2 types of hulls generally when we're talking about ground combat vehicles. Is it a sponson or a box hull? This Russian BMP-3 is an example of a sponson hull because it protrudes over the tracks and the drive assembly. The box hull, where the hull sits between the tracks and drive assembly, is the type you'll find on most tanks, fighting vehicles, and similar platforms like this Paladin 155mm mobile artillery system. It's also important to note the Cobra H.I.S.S has a troop deck on the rear of the vehicle for transporting several ground troops if necessary. Okay, so the H.I.S.S is definitely a box hull. Another aspect of hull identification is armor. Is the vehicle heavily armored, such as faceted angular armor plates, or ERA, which is explosive reactive armor, like the easily identifiable ERA 6-pack on the Russian T-80 tank? Is the vehicle lightly armored, or is it unarmored?
But wait!
Obviously, the Cobra H.I.S.S is armored. You can clearly see the armor plates in the mold of the toy itself, and also on the blueprints that we're going to look at right now. When referencing the blueprints, there is only mention of armor plating skirts over the drive assemblies for the tracks. Using critical thinking, it's safe to surmise all the dots on the blueprints and the physical mold of the H.I.S.S are lightly armored plates due to their configuration. Tracked ground vehicle, box hull, lightly armored. Check. Check, check. Now we're going to get into the vehicle's armament, which is the weaponry. What armament does the vehicle have? Are we talking something like the M242 25mm Bushmaster chain gun on the M2A1 Bradley fighting vehicle? The 125mm smoothbore main gun of a Russian T-80 tank? You can clearly see the telltale bore evacuator here, which is indicative of a tank main gun. The 120mm smoothbore main gun of an M1A2 Abrams tank. Again, bore evacuator can clearly be seen. It's a tank gun. Or something like the 2A70 low-velocity 100mm cannon of the Russian BMP-3. And the 100mm low-velocity cannon on a Russian BMP-3 is not a tank gun. Yeah, it's going to be important later. Well, now let's look at the armament on the Cobra H.I.S.S.
I know what that is!
The Cobra H.I.S.S has twin 90mm fire-linked cannons. Now, 90mm is too small and too low velocity to require a bore evacuator. So I'm going to say these cannon tips are some sort of Mars Industries muzzle brakes. Yeah, we'll go with that. Especially since at 90mm, the twin cannons of the H.I.S.S would surely be rifled for accuracy at their lower velocity versus a tank's main gun. So what that means in layman terms, the armament on the Cobra H.I.S.S are too small and too low velocity for the vehicle to operate in the capacity of a main battle tank. Now let's look at the turret. Since the Cobra H.I.S.S is a future forward designed by Destro, and it's fake, we're not going to be looking for things like a pan-shaped turret or bustle racks. We know the Cobra H.I.S.S has a hatchless open canopy style gun turret, which sits flush into the vehicle's roof. Tracked vehicle, box hull, lightly armored, twin fire-linked, low-velocity 90mm rifled cannons with an open, flushed turret. Got it.
What the f did I just hear?
Suspension. Pretty straightforward. The Cobra H.I.S.S has a supported tracked suspension with two exposed idler bogies, which guide the tracks during travel, and an exposed main drive bogie or drive sprocket, same. As for the road wheels, engineering would dictate they're hidden behind the armor plating skirts for protection during combat, so the H.I.S.S doesn't suffer a mobility kill. And now, our vehicle identification of the Cobra H.I.S.S is complete as per Army doctrine, direct fire engagement process.
Survey said 0.
The Cobra High Speed Sentry is a lightly armored, supported tracked suspension, boxed hulled, direct action combat vehicle armed with two fire-linked, low-velocity, rifled 90mm cannons, no defensive measures, and operated by a crew complement of two, consisting of a driver and gunner. Although multiple fire platforms exist of this vehicle, the Cobra H.I.S.S, in all its iterations to include the septic tank, is not a tank.
No!
Older H.I.S.S platforms are more in line with the Russian BMP, the American Bradley, and the British Warrior, more suited for fast attack or reconnaissance missions rather than high-intensity force-on-force kinetic warfare. Any variant of the Cobra H.I.S.S that has a troop ramp would again fall in line with the American M2A1 Bradley or even the American M113 as dual-role fighting vehicle and battlefield armored troop transport. To include the classified HASLAB H.I.S.S. Well, what about the modern H.I.S.S platforms from around the time of the live-action movies? Well, those would not be classified as a tank, even with their pronounced turrets, because that turret is armed with a missile, and therefore is configured to operate more as an ATGM platform, which stands for Anti-Tank Guided Missile. So in summary, MOBAT. It's right in the name. Motorized Battle Tank, MOBAT. That's a tank. Cobra H.I.S.S, not a tank. The Crimson Attack Tank. Well, again, it's in the name. It's a tank. The Mauler MBT. Well, MBT stands for Main Battle Tank. The Cobra H.I.S.S 2. Not a tank, even with 3 guns. Septic Tank. Nope. That's more like a fire truck. The Cobra Crimson Attack Tank 2. Definitely another Cobra tank. The Patriot Grizzly tank. Yep. Tank. The Canadian Cobra Chard. Very rare Cobra tank. The Red Shadows Hyena. Easily one of my favorite versions of the H.I.S.S. Still not a tank. No. Nope. No.
Frickin' laser beams.
This should have been called the Septic tank.
You will never find a more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
No. No! Not even this rad design from Resolute is a tank. Or this. This is not a tank.
Bingo! Yahtzee!
The Cobra High Speed Sentry was never designed to be a tank. It was never intended to be a tank. That's just a term that took on a life of its own. And, 4 decades later, here we are.
H.I.S.S is unbeatable. H.I.S.S is ready.
I have to give a shout out to 3D Joe's Blood for the Baron and Yo Joe for various images used in this video. Also, I got to give a special shout out to the H.I.S.S tank forums for being the benchmark of the shittiest place to go and talk about anything related to G.I. Joe.
Chad, how insensitive of you.
I can't wait to see some of the comments that are going to show up on this video. I'd like to thank everybody for watching. I'd like to thank all my subscribers and my channel members. Again, if you're new here and you're not subscribed, maybe just click the button, hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I put out new content, which I put out a new video every Monday morning at 7 a.m. Eastern. And don't forget to come back Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Eastern for the live streams. You never know who's going to show up there. As always, my friends, leave a comment below. Let's talk some Joe. Remember, the Cobra H.I.S.S is not a tank. Steer clear of the piss tank forums and have an awesome day.